So we're going to draw this chair. It's called the ZigZag Chair. If you want to, looks like I left this link in here. You can go to this link and you can actually see a 3D model that was modeled in a computer program that I took these drawings from. But we're going to draw this as if we're standing behind the chair. So this is standing in front of the chair. We're going to draw this as if you're standing behind the chair. And we're going to think about some of the same things that we thought about with the bookshelf, which is we have a cube unit. I'm going to imagine that this thing, the cube unit is at the top of the seat. And we're going to look at some of the distances that are related to that. And so this is not quite 2 cube units high. I'm not even going to use some of the things that we've already talked about. Again, these are tools that you can employ, but we're hoping to get past some of those training tools. I do want you to use just freehand, so we've talked about this a lot. I've begun to set up, and I've basically established what the perspective is with these lines, so that you don't have to worry about that yet. But you do need to worry about, again, the rate of convergence going this way. So I could use that tool, I could use that method where I'm just drawing in a rectangle where they intersect right here gives me the rate of convergence. It's converging faster going to the left, just like the 2 examples we had earlier today. But now what I need to do is I need to establish a cube. And so I'm going to think about this front line being this line right here to the edge of the chair. And so just like we did earlier, I'm going to divide that in half. So I'm going to use that kind of bisect method. And I'm imagining it, so I'm imagining something out there. And then I'm going to come back this way, and I'm imagining a line and a midpoint, a line and a midpoint, a line and a midpoint. It looks like that needs to converge just a little bit slower going this way. Notice again, I've got a bunch of lines drawn here. I've got mistakes. I've got construction lines. We're going to begin to talk a little bit more about how to apply line weight, and so some of those construction lines begin to disappear. So let's look at this chair. And what I need to do is establish what a square would be down here. So I'm looking at this. It's easier for me proportionally to see a square than a rectangular setup. So I'm not trying to draw this full rectangle. I'm going to try and look at what a square surface would be in here. And that feels probably pretty good. And I could draw that on up just for the sake of this. This is a simplified version of this ZigZag chair, and its depth is basically the same as as the width. So we're working on continuing to work on that cube unit. So what I want to do is draw a line that represents the depth of this chair moving back, and I think that's probably it. So let's look at this point right here is going to be down here. Now, the tricky thing is that I'm not drawing an angle from right there to right here. I'm actually drawing an angle from right there to just inside, right, where that would come up. I'm going to go ahead and carry that over, that front edge. And I can draw a parallel line. And just do this lightly because I do want you to come back. We're going to come back with a straight edge and finish this drawing in a minute. So I've drawn basically that material thickness there, and carry that over in that direction. I can take the depth that it's going, carry it forward. I've got a lot less convergence going towards that right vanishing point, a lot more going towards the left vanishing point. That gives me a point right there. I could carry that on down. Here we are solving the puzzle of how to correctly construct these things. What information do I have and what information do I need? I can go, I've got this point going down to here. I've got that point on the back side of this object. I've carried that over so I can establish what the back edge of this would be. We won't see that. We'll see this edge, but that gives me a parallel. Now what I want to do is find where this point is. Oh, let me give the seat some thickness. I want to find where that point is, and it's, I mean, I could divide this up. It looks like it's about 1/8 of the way over. I think somewhere about right there. And then this is down from the top, so what I'm looking for is this line. So I'm going to come down from the top about that far, and that gives me an angle, and carry this over towards the left vanishing point, and it's actually just below that line. That point is. I've got to give this back a thickness. Carry that over. And this should be somewhat parallel to this one. And then you ultimately have a slight angle going up for that backrest. It's not going towards that vanishing point over there. You can kind of see that angle. If you really wanted to try and calculate what it was, you could look at this and from a side view, you carry that over, and you carry this top edge that we've drawn, and then you could say, okay, well, it's about that far in front of this, so I've actually drawn that maybe too much of an angle. Notice that I'm getting a little bit darker as I work in this sketch, so the backrest is starting to show up and differentiate itself with object lines, or we'll call them object lines as opposed to construction lines. Now what I need to do, the only thing I'm missing from a geometric standpoint is I've got these little supports, and then I've got this distance right here that it stepped in. So we'll just draw a line right there. Already got that line drawn in. Now I'm looking at an angle. I'm guesstimating that angle. Let's see. If I pull this forward, it gives me a better idea as to how that's vanishing. And so now I've got that chair drawn. Right now, let's go ahead and just try and darken in some of these lines with freehand. I want to talk about the next exercise before we really finish this drawing. I want to get into the next exercise before we finish this drawing. But for now, just work in, notice how I'm rotating my page, work in some of those darker lines so that you're trying to ultimately, to the viewer, make these construction lines somewhat disappear. So we finished this sketch. We've gone through this exercise. Now what I want you to do is apply that 3 line weight to this chair, which is somewhat difficult. I've got so many lines in here that it's difficult for me to get back to even the 1. We'll maybe add the half line weight to just cut this in half for the fun of it. But my 1 is basically defined, so really what I want to do is I want to start to pop this thing with just the 2 line weight, and then maybe clean up the 1 with a razor point, and make sure that since I'm using my tool now, that make sure my lines are straight. So here's my 2. Actually, that first line that I put in there, we would really want it to be this Sharpie. And that's all I'm going to use that Sharpie for. Most of what I'm going to add is this 2 line weight. This would be a 1, so I'm using this pen, but I'm gonna let that fade out. Here we've got a 2, and now I can even correct for some of maybe the mistakes that I made in freehand. I might angle that just slightly different based upon looking and evaluating the drawing. I'm actually going to flip this over because I want to make sure these lines are parallel. Excuse me, they should be converging, but they are converging. They're so close together that ultimately they're kind of parallel. Here I'm going to stop before this and let kind of a 1 pop through right there. You know what? I missed a line. I actually need to draw the bottom edge where it meets the support for the chair. Let's see. So here again, I want to make sure, you know, in cleaning this up, I can adjust some of these lines a little bit so that my material thickness looks a little bit more consistent across the chair. So, you know, even just with that little bit, those construction lines somewhat disappear. Not really, but I'm telling the viewer what I want them to see. Here's where I'm going to be very careful coming across. So I'm going to make sure this is so close to vertical that I'm really not going to have any convergence here. This line first, and I'm trying to correct this a little bit. I didn't have quite enough convergence in those freehand lines, so the thickness of my pen can help me fix some of those things. And so there we've got it. And again, I hope that you recognize that by applying that 3 line weight, the construction lines are there. I mean, these bother me a little bit. This one that isn't in line with the convergence that helped us get that angle, that line bothers me a little bit, but ultimately at the end of the day, what I want the viewer to see is highlighted with the 3 line weight.